Welcome to the Shared Practices podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Richard Lowe. This is part 2 of my interview with Tarun Agarwal. Dr. Tarun Agarwal, often known as T-Bone. He has his own podcast, T-Bone Speaks. He's an educator, very, very blunt. If you want to know what Tarun thinks, just ask him. He'll tell you. And in part 1, if you haven't listened to that one, he called me out for not having used my camera in the first year as a new dentist. So I got it as a graduation present. I got a dental camera, quote unquote, all the nice fixings, and failed to take pictures of my amalgams and CEREC crowns first year of Army dentistry. I bought it for my residency. I'm using it all the time now. Not just because T-Bone called me out on it, but he was right. I should have been taking pictures last year. So in part 2, we talk about a little bit more about associateships and how to get the most out of them, the ownership mentality. And then we get into this episode, one of the topics that we haven't hit as hard on in this season, but I'm excited to delve into, which is the subject of personal finance, debt, living like a dentist, saving money versus living like a student. I think you're really going to enjoy this. So we'll turn this over to the interview with Dr. Tarun Agarwal. So this idea of expanding your scope of practice, that's one of...
Keep asking me the question.
No. So I'm moving on from this. So I'm saying that's one way to get a bigger shovel. If you've got this big debt hole that you're working on, which is what a lot of people are concerned about, a lot of people are afraid of, expanding the scope of your practice, doing those procedures that have a higher ceiling, productive value than just fillings and crowns. That's one way to do it. The two other ways that I want to focus on and talk about and find experts on would be moving where you're needed. And that's not necessarily, rural versus, suburban, but where there is demand and a practice that needs you. And then the other one would be moving towards practice ownership. And so what are your thoughts on moving where you're needed, and where should people be looking for practices where they're needed, and how can they tell if a practice actually needs them, or an area actually needs them, demographics, all of that kind of thing? How can you figure out where am I needed? What's a good associateship or a good ownership opportunity for me in a given area? So
here's what I would tell you, okay? And this, again, has to do with my immigrant background. If you go, 90% of motels in this country are owned by Indians. Okay. If you go to any small podunk town in America, the physicians in that town will be brown, and the Indian and convenience store owners will be brown in those cities, because immigrants have a tendency to go where the opportunity exists.
Right.
Okay. They don't choose. We moved from India.
Right.
Okay.
You're already
to a town of 5,000 people.
Right.
Okay. And how in the hell did we end up in a town of 5,000 people in all of America? Because we chose to live where the opportunity was. Okay. Now, too many people say, I want to live where I love living, where there's no opportunity.
Right.
Okay. So to me, if you live where there is a dental school and the majority of your class stays in that area, that is stupidity, in my opinion.
Okay.
Okay. So to me, you should, again, your first 3, if you tell me you're worried about your debt, your listener, then why would you move to a city that pays the least, that is hardest to find a job, and costs the most to live in?
Right.
Why would you want to live in New York? Why would you want to live in San Diego? Why would you want to be in San Francisco? Why would you want to be in Raleigh, North Carolina? Why would you want to be in any of these places? Because the opportunity lies in what we call the secondary markets.
Right.
Okay. Which is, if you take an hour, you draw a circle 1 hour outside of any city, and you say, I will not go inside that circle. If you go 1 hour outside of those cities, you will do unbelievably well.
I've never heard that before. I like that.
No, it's logical. I mean, but let's why have you? I mean, it makes no sense that people have never heard. I mean, think about it. Where you live in Phoenix, Arizona, for God's sakes, correct?
I did, yeah.
Okay, so if in Phoenix, could you imagine being an associate in Phoenix?
Oh no, I mean, I have no desire to go back there, because I know it'd be crazy.
It'd be crazy, right? But how many of your classmates are in Phoenix?
A chunk of them, a good chunk.
Yeah, but that's the stupidest place to be.
No, and my in-laws are in Indianapolis, and when we get out of the Army in a couple of years, it's probably going to be Southern Indiana, but it's not going to be Indianapolis because there's a dental school in Indianapolis. So
It's a metro city. Everybody wants to live in the city.
everyone wants to live in the city. So we're looking at Southern Indiana, but I just
So
like
draw a line 45 minutes outside of Indianapolis and do not move inside that circle. Do not practice inside this circle. You can live there.
it makes sense. I just have never heard anyone define it in that way. Like I just love that the simplicity of it. Draw a circle, don't go in there.
It's like, listen, and see this. So I got to do a podcast one day with my dad because there's so many life lessons I learned from my parents that I didn't even understand what I was
At the
learning.
time, right.
We always built motels in small cities. Okay, and I asked my dad why. He goes, "Dude, all the other cities you have to build big motels. We don't have the money to build those motels."
Right.
Okay, and in all these big cities, you have stiff competition.
Right.
So why wouldn't I go to the small town and be one of two or one of three? Why would I want to be one of 50 when I can be one of three?
Oh, absolutely.
And it costs less in small towns to live. It costs less in small towns to operate. It costs less in small towns to build.
Well, and
you get the same fees, by the way.
right, the insurances don't really know
Not
or
that much.
care that much about, yeah. So, but do you think that's a temporary play, or do you think that's kind of a long-term, can you say, I've got this debt, I've got this financial pressure on me, I'm just going to go do the small town thing for 5-10 years, and then we'll move back to San Diego or New York or wherever.
Whatever. Sure, because then you get past the money phase, although moving to New York will create a new money phase.
Right.
And then you get into the time phase, which I call the other way of looking at time is lifestyle, right? So ultimately, but also that's somewhat wishful thinking. Okay, the truth is, if you go somewhere for 5-10 years, you likely put roots in that area, and the chances of moving from that area are much more difficult.
Right. Well, and I'm just trying to help people kind of create a realistic picture of, okay, I've got this debt load, I have these financial pressures, I need to do what it takes, and sometimes what it takes is not living where all the other dentists are. And I also think so my theory is you got to do one of these four things. You have to, or at least two of these four things: expand the scope of your practice, go where you're needed, move towards practice ownership, and then the last one is, if you're going to be a practice owner, you have to treat your practice like a business. And so you can technically not expand the scope of your practice and go be a composite and crown dentist in a rural area and be a practice owner and still do well.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I will tell you that, let me use North Carolina as an example, okay? We now have 2 dental schools in North Carolina, and the vast majority of the dentists live in the Triangle or the Charlotte metro area, okay? And if I were coming out today, there is no way in hell that I would practice within Charlotte or the Raleigh area. I would go to Eastern North Carolina.
Okay.
Okay, because I will be one dentist per every 5,000 to 8,000 people.
Right. Perfect.
Okay, and maybe I won't do all the fanciest procedures, but I will tell you those people want fancy things too.
Right.
Okay, and there's less competition for those people with the disposable income or the discretionary income in those discretionary spendable dollars in those areas than there are in Raleigh. In Raleigh, you compete with house poor, you compete with private schools, you compete with soccer moms and cheerleading moms and all this other stuff that your discretionary income goes to. Whereas when you live in a more simple area, people don't have those needs. Instead, they want to take care of themselves, or they have more trust, and you're more respected.
Right.
And it's there's lots of positives to that.
Oh, absolutely. And I've never heard that framed that way either, of the competition of dollars that I could be spending. If there's a lot of fun things to do and a lot of people to keep up with, a lot of Joneses to keep up with, then of course your dental procedure looks a little bit less attractive than having another boat to compete with the neighbors.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, it's a fact of life. It's a reality.
Okay, so moving on to the next one. I liked that. Moving on to practice ownership. What do you think a young dentist should have done or prepared or experienced before moving into practice ownership?
Well, I don't believe that everybody should be a practice owner.
Okay, good.
But I do believe that everybody should strive for ownership.
Okay.
because it's the American dream.
Okay.
Okay? It gives you control of your destiny. Okay. So I will tell you that I believe everybody should try to have ownership because it gives you absolute control. But I will tell you that I believe that less than 50% of graduates are practice owners, are in my mind capable of being practice owners.
And how would you know? Like, am I capable of being a practice owner? Like,
I would say that you probably are.
no, and I know that. I'm not asking that, but I'm saying for my audience potentially, how would someone say, you know what, this is going to be hard. I'm scared. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but we're going to make this happen.
Well,
Versus someone who's like, you know what, maybe practice ownership isn't for me long term.
okay, so I would say, well, what is your goal in practice ownership?
For me, it would be the control. It would be the
Are you
relationship
willing to
with
make,
patients.
okay, so,
The and to be honest, I like running a business. I think that's
okay,
something that I like. I know that
okay,
about myself.
right. Okay, so you'd probably be ready. Okay, but here, okay, so let's look at facts and realities here. Okay, okay, in most associateships, you're going to make what, 30%?
Yep.
Okay, most practices run at 70% overhead.
Okay.
So why in the world, if you're not a business oriented person, if you're not willing to do the sacrifices that it takes to be a business owner, not a practice owner, a business owner, why in the hell would you own a practice to make the same amount of money?
Right.
Okay, so to me, that's the first thing.
Okay.
Now, to be being a business owner, it's a 24/7 job.
Right.
Okay, it's always on your mind. So if you say to me, I hear people that say to me all the time, dentists my age, say, dude, I just want to come to work and all I want to do is to do the dentistry. I'm like, go be an associate.
Okay.
Okay. If you say that to me, then I'm saying you're not ready for business ownership.
Oh, that's great.
Does that kind of make sense?
That's a great
Okay.
qualifying question.
Okay. So if you say, I just want to show up and do the dentistry, you don't own a practice.
Okay.
Okay. If you say, you know what, I want to get out there and I want to go to the Rotary Club. I don't even know if those things exist anymore. Okay. Okay. Eagle Scouts, Boy Scouts, whatever it is.
Sure.
Okay. So if you say, I want to go to those things, I
Local
want to
chamber
have
of
control,
commerce. Yeah.
whatever it is, I want to deal with somebody calling in sick and me having to do hygiene. Okay. I want to deal with somebody, drinking wine at the office and now I got to deal with that. And they happen to be my star player.
Right.
Okay. If you say I'm prepared to deal with those things, then you're ready for practice ownership.
Okay.
Okay, but if you just say, well, I don't like where I work because they're assholes and I don't get to do the good procedures, then I would say that's not the right reason to own a practice.
Okay.
Okay, or to have a business. So to me, those are the ultimate questions because in today's world, if money is your motivating factor, you could probably make as much, if not more, as an associate. Okay, because here's the other thing. The average dentist in this country makes a little north of 150 grand.
Okay.
Okay, and you can make that at a good associateship.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so ultimately, practice ownership is not necessarily more money.
Okay. Fair enough.
Okay, now people like me, people like you in the future. Okay, you will make more money because you create a business.
Right.
Okay, and you run it like a business, you treat it like a business, you invest in it like a business. Okay, but for those who are unwilling to do those things or don't see themselves having that in them, or who haven't taken advantage of those things on their days off in their associateship, like are you in the associateship asking your front office, hey, how'd you file for insurance? How'd you put it into the treatment plan? How do you put into the treatment plan what their insurance covers and what their insurance doesn't cover? What do you do when insurance doesn't pay? What do you do when a patient says this? When you're not asking those questions in your associateship, you're not prepared to own a practice. Because then what's going to happen, you're going to build a practice, own a practice, buy a practice, and you're going to be dependent on other people running that thing for you. And that's the exact reason that you went and bought and opened a practice, is to have ownership and control. But then again, you're going to be a slave to those things in your practice.
Well, and for me, one of the reasons that I'm doing this podcast and my website is that in the Army, I don't get exposed to all of those things. And so I was like, well, by the time I get out, it's going to be 6 years between my 2-year residency, doing my general AEGD and then repayment. and I'm going to get out. I'm not going to have any business experience. But then I realized that a lot of people feel the same way about their associateships, that they're like, well, I don't get any business experience.
No, that's the wrong. No,
No,
see,
and it's
they
because
didn't. They didn't
they're
take.
not taking advantage of what they could be, and they're not
Yeah,
tuning into everything that's happening around them, and whether or not this is the right way to handle things, or could there be a better way to handle this, or are they doing things on purpose? Is there a system to this, or is this just kind of how the practice does things, and it's chaotic? And learning from, is this practice run well? Is this business run well? Is this how I want to run my practice or my business in the future? And so I realized that.
one of the.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go first.
No, I've just realized that the fear that's driving me to create a podcast and a website um, is a good thing, and that associates should have that same mentality of, oh crap, I'm going to have to be doing these things on my own, or hiring someone to do these things, or
Mhm.
understanding them at a good enough level that I can make a decision. Do we outsource this? Do we keep it in house? Do I do it? Do I delegate it? And what's it worth? If you don't understand the underlying business concepts and how things can be done, then you just kind of inherit whatever the last guy did, and whether or not that was a good thing.
Yeah, and I would say that you can't hire people to do things for you. You have to lead them to do things your way.
Okay.
And I'm going to give you a great example that happened today in our practice. I can't today or yesterday. I mean, they're all blur together for
Sure.
me now. Okay. So in the very beginning, I think one of the best things that happened to me in the very beginning, I learned I did everything in my practice. I filed the claims. I did the treatment plans. I determined insurance. I did eligibility calls. All of those things when I first opened my practice because I had all the time in the world,
Right.
right? And everything was about money. So money meant hiring people. So that meant I just did it myself.
Right.
So, so that's one of the best things that happened to me because yesterday, one of our newer team members, she's been with us about a year, had never seen a plan, an insurance plan, where it's not a percentage deal. It's a insurance where the copay is a set dollar amount.
Okay.
So she didn't understand how to put that into the computer and determine how much the patient had to pay.
Mm,
So I was able to say, you know what? I know exactly how to do it. It's been 12 years since I've done it.
right.
Okay, but let me show you how to do it. I don't maybe not remember the exact clicks anymore, but I know conceptually how to do it. And I sat there and walked her through it.
Huh.
And what that did was it reminded me of how much I really understand all the intricate moving parts of our business.
Okay.
So if somebody was out, there's nothing in that office I can't do if somebody were out and I weren't seeing patients.
Right.
Okay, but the opposite is not true. Nobody else can do the seeing the patients other than me.
Right.
Okay, so there's nothing in my office that I don't know how to do. Like I'll hear dentists say, "Well, I don't know how to turn the X-ray unit on." Like, dude, don't go be an associate.
Right.
Okay, I don't know where my equipment is, my syringes are. I'm like, dude, go be an associate.
Well, and that mentality of, I own this, so I better own this from A to Z. I think is one of the pieces that people need to have and to realize that's going to be part of practice ownership early on.
So the alternative would have been my team member would have just told that patient, I don't know how to do this.
Right.
We're just going to have you pay out of pocket and then we'll submit insurance and that patient may go somewhere else, right?
Right. Right.
But instead, for me, it's, hey, I can show you. So I'm showing them that I really do know what's going on. So they better dot their I's and cross their T's.
Right.
Okay. That I can coach them. So next time they have a question, they know that they can come to me and ask me a question. I probably know what in the hell's going on. Okay. And it's an opportunity for me to have a better connection with that team member.
Right. No,
And for them to know I've been in their shoes. I'm literally one of them.
right. And that, both that respect and that leadership and that understanding that okay, no, Dr. Agarwal knows exactly what's going on. I think you gain that respect and trust and leadership over time through little micro interactions like that.
Yeah, and so it goes back to that, whether you're an associate or a practice owner. And when I don't have patients, I at least, my wife reminds me, or somebody else reminds me every day. You need to, when I don't have a patient or I'm going to my office, don't take the shortest route to your private office. Take the longest route to your private office. Okay, because remember, when you're seen or be seen, when you get seen or people see you, okay, the good things happen. When you hide from people and you take the shortest route and become a hermit,
go back to your office. Yeah.
But it's okay. You got to go back to your office to write a note, whatever it is. Take the long way there.
Right.
And walk around the entire office to get there. So that way you see what's going on. It's amazing how many times I see people congregating. And as soon as I walk up there, people they like
disperse.
Scatter.
Right. Like cockroaches.
Okay, right. But see, what happens is if I can do that consistently, guess what never happens anymore?
Hanging around and congregating for hours.
There's no hanging around and congregating, right? So like we keep the door to our break room closed. So we have temps that come in right now because we have a temp hygienist.
Right.
So when I walk to my office, I walk through the break room. And then it's amazing. I'll find I didn't have a patient right now. Well, why don't you go help the other hygienist?
Right. Go set up or tear down or help in some way.
Yeah. And see what happens. It sets the expectation. Like in my office, when my team members interview our potential people, they straight up tell them, listen, if you're 1 minute late, he will fire you.
Oh, wow.
He will tell you to go home.
Right.
Or he will give you that look of disappointment. Okay. So if you have a problem getting here on time, do not take this job. Do not waste our time.
And the fact that it's coming from them, not from you, I think shows that in the past you've made that clear.
Yeah.
And that leadership is consistent but that takes that level of ownership and saying, okay, this is my thing. This is our thing. We're a team. And if you're going to show up late, you're not part of the team.
But then I can't show up late either, correct?
Right.
So how about this? When I'm going to be late, because there are times where I suddenly have to drop the kids to school or something comes up, I text my team members to let them know as soon as I know I'm going to be late. Not at 7:44, because I'm supposed to be there at 7:45 or whatever it is.
Right.
As soon as I know I'm going to be late, I treat them or do to them the way I want to have them do to me.
Right.
Okay? So when I'm late, like we used to have a thing where if you were late, you put $5 in the cookie jar.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then I would have to put $20 in the cookie jar.
Right.
Okay. So I never, I'm cheap. I'm an Indian. I don't want to be late. So I never got late. Okay. And I try to be the first one to the office.
Right.
I am not that doctor, that owner of the business that strolls in late.
Well, and like you said, it's an ownership mentality.
Yeah, but it's beyond that. It's not even just it's the leadership mentality.
Right.
Because I get to the office the earliest, and almost every day I leave the latest.
Okay.
And I'm not saying people should do that.
Right.
But I'm saying how about this? You cannot be late and leave early.
Okay.
Be you're the owner, leader of your practice, my office manager, she's not allowed to be late and she's not allowed to leave early. Because if I let that person be late and leave early, what does that tell everybody else?
That you don't care.
Yeah, if it's acceptable for that person,
then it's definitely acceptable for me, who's down on the totem pole in the team.
Yeah, so it's everything to me, right? It's little things like this. Like I learned in my first associateship, my very first office I worked in, is that one day we didn't have a patient at 4:00, so I hopped out of the office early to go play golf. I never had a patient at 4:00 ever again. Because if I left early, guess who else left early?
Everybody else.
And I was just an associateship. I mean, I was just an associate there, correct?
Right.
Okay, but I saw that very early. The first few times I played golf, when I got done early, I'm like, I don't have a patient. I'll go play golf. They never, ever tried to schedule somebody at 4:00.
Right.
Okay, because they said, okay, he's going to leave early to go play golf. Okay, and then we'll get to leave early too.
And yeah, no, and once that precedent is set, it's set.
It's hard to change it.
No, it's way harder.
Like even now when, listen, I know people are late. Okay. like for example, my hygienist had a doctor's appointment recently.
Okay.
So I knew she was going to be late, right? But when she came in late, I said, Megan, and I said, I said to Megan, Megan, we're a little late this morning. I know you had a doctor's appointment.
And what'd she say at that point? You just kind of left it there?
No. She didn't have to say anything. I know you had a doctor's appointment, but it's the psychology of it. I want everybody else to hear and see that I noticed that people are late.
Okay. So even
Okay?
though you knew and she knew you knew, you
Yeah,
brought it up.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's the psychology of everything. To me is psychology. Maybe it's because I live with a psychiatrist, but even before that, it's a psycho. See, to me, there's so much that's unknown and unheard, and that's where your body reactions are, and that's your behaviors and your mannerisms, and all of those things affect everybody around you. And you see, you're the average of the 5 people you hang out with.
Right.
If you hang out with idiots, then you're an idiot.
Right.
Okay, I want to be the dumbest person in the room. I really do.
Right.
Okay, and the problem right now is it's hard for me to be the dumbest person in the room right now,
Right.
and that doesn't say much about our society. And so to me, those are the important things: is how you're leading your people. How often are you going to schedule time for your team to train?
Right.
And it can't always be after work.
Sometimes you're going to be paying them during work.
Sometimes it's not even just paying them. Sometimes you're going to be losing production during the workday.
Right.
And it's what it takes.
Okay, before we move on, a quick word from our sponsor, Q Optics. In the last episode, I mentioned that I had upgraded my loops from 3.5 to 4.5 while I was still in dental school. And when I did that, my neck started hurting. And I was so frustrated because I loved that 4.5 magnification. First I thought, oh, it's the angle of declination, or maybe it's the weight because it's a bulkier frame and heavier loops, and maybe that's what it is. I realized that the reason my neck hurt all the time was how much I had to bend down to look over my loops. And so if you look at yourself in the mirror, this is what I want you to do. I want you to stand in front of the mirror with your loops on and look at your eyes looking straight forward. If the loops, if the telescopes are blocking your eyeballs, that means anytime you look at something that's not through the loops, you have to crane your head down to look at it. You are hurting your neck. It blows my mind. Why can't you make a frame that's taller, that reaches down further? And if you look at the cover of the podcast, you can see that Q Optics has designed their own frame that dips down to make room for the optics to go below your eye level. So I can put on my loops and I can actually look in the mirror and see clearly my eyeballs completely over the level of the telescopes. If you find that your neck's hurting or that your back is starting to hunch, maybe it's not necessarily the angle of declination or the weight. Maybe it's the fact that there isn't enough room in the lenses to see over your loops. So if you're ready to make the upgrade to better ergonomics, you can email sales@qoptics.com. That's q-optics.com with the promo code SP16 for $100 off your next pair of loops or $300 off your next loops and light combo. Q Optics. It's time to have a better look. No, absolutely. There was one last set of topics before we wrap this up. Are you an hour later than me? So it's midnight there, right?
I'm good. Don't worry.
Okay. Thank you. The last set of things was you mentioned it briefly, was this idea of living like a student for another year or two out of dental school. And I feel like the four expenses that can kind of get out of hand out of dental school or just in your early career would be number 1, home, number 2, cars, number 3, luxury goods, like just things that people think they should have because they're a dentist, whether that's boats or watches or just being extravagant, vacations. And if that's your thing, that's your thing. And then the last one is CE. And you should be investing in CE, but you have to be careful in which CE you're investing in. So what are your thoughts on home ownership straight out of school versus renting? And you kind of mentioned that briefly. Cars, other luxury goods, eventually things like that are appropriate. But for someone with $400,000, $500,000 of student loans trying to move into practice ownership, what would your advice be?
So I really have a lot of places I want to go with this.
Okay.
So
good.
So let me say this, okay? When money is your number one issue, I believe you should rent everything.
Okay.
Okay. So I think you should rent a home or an apartment or a trailer or a RV, whatever it is. Okay. I believe you should have roommates. Okay.
Okay.
I believe you should make living expenses as inexpensive as possible.
Okay.
Okay. I believe you should rent or lease a car. Okay. How about this? You don't need a car.
Sure. If you can get
Uber it
by.
every.
Yeah.
No, just Uber it everywhere.
Right.
Your car. What is your car? Let's think about this. How often do you have a car? By the way.
I do.
Okay. How much do you drive it each day?
20 minutes to and from work.
Great. Why the hell do you own a car?
There isn't buses or
Okay, so you don't have Uber?
I don't have Uber in Fort Hood, Texas.
You don't have a bicycle?
It would take me about an hour and a half to get there.
Okay, so that's legitimate. Okay, but let's pretend that you have.
But
Uber
I bought a used car, a $6,000 Toyota Corolla.
Okay. So that to me is rent. I mean, cars are always rented because nobody pays cash for them, right?
Right.
Okay, so I wouldn't go buy anything new. I would buy very used, or I would not. I would choose not to own a car.
Sure.
And now that comes from a guy who likes cars.
Okay. What do you drive?
We shouldn't go there.
Okay.
So
wrong time to bring that up.
No. I can. No, I'll be upfront with people. I have a Tesla, I have a Bentley, and I have a Mercedes.
Oh, that's right. Chuck was giving you a hard time because you don't wash your Tesla.
I don't wash any of my cars. I don't.
Sorry.
It's a waste of money.
Right.
It's a waste of money. But okay, so to me, why do you need to own a car? Because in today's day and age, cars cost you the cost of the car, the cost of running in the car, the cost of insurance, the cost of repairs, all that stuff, right?
Right.
Okay. And if you let's say you're like most people, you go to work for 20 minutes, that's a that's a $12 Uber ride on the way there, and that's a $12 Uber ride on the way back. It's $25 a day.
Right.
Times 5 days a week. Okay, that's $100 a week.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's going to cost you $400 a month to get back and forth to work.
Right.
Why in the hell would you want to own a car?
No, that's a great point.
Because the car itself is going to cost you at least $200 a month.
Right.
To buy a car.
And then insurance and gas.
And insurance and then gas and then all that nonsense. Why would you want to own a car?
Right.
Okay. So that's my take on that. Okay. And that I would tell you is probably something I personally would not do. But that's my take on that. Okay.
Right.
But then again, I'm not in a money situation like other people. Okay.
Right.
So and then I would say all those other luxury things go out the door. Okay. So I believe that everybody should live in a budget.
Okay? And how would you recommend if someone has never done a budget before? What's the simplest way that?
Okay. So somebody that's never done a budget before, that is probably why they're in that much debt.
That's how much dental school costs.
That's BS.
Okay.
Okay. Your debt is not just tuition.
Right.
Your debt is also living expenses, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So then you didn't have I'm not saying you personally.
No,
but those people didn't have a budget in that.
Right.
So it was an unlimited supply of money to borrow money.
Okay.
So that's an extra $50,000 that you probably borrowed that you didn't need to borrow.
Potentially, yeah.
So that's part of the reason you're in that much debt, right?
Right.
So and I don't mean you personally.
I'm not offended. And budgeting is something that we are both. I'm passionate about and not good at often.
Right, of course, right. So here's how I decide my budget. Okay, how much can I live on?
Okay.
Okay, and then I have another monthly bill, the most important monthly bill that anyone should have that very few people have in their life. Okay, and that's what I call my FU fund.
Okay.
All right, so I have a goal that by the time I'm 50, I have the ability not to have to work.
Right.
Okay, so I can actuarize that, I can annualize that, and say that I need to put away X dollars by the time, every month to get there.
Okay.
And I'll ramp it up. So how about this? Once you are a dentist and you have a normal private sector job,
right?
Okay, I believe that you should put away a minimum of $1,000 a month.
Okay.
Into your freedom fund.
Okay.
Okay. No matter what, it's a bill.
Right.
Okay, it is a non-negotiable bill.
Just set it on bill pay, on auto pay, right up front. Don't even see it.
Bank that you don't see.
Right.
Okay, no matter what. And then year 2, that number goes to $2,000 a month.
Right.
Year 3, that goes to $3,000 a month. Year four, $4,000 a month. Year five, $5,000 a month. Year six, $6,000 a month, and so on and so forth.
Right.
So when you get to year 15, it's $15,000 a month. When you get to year 20, it's $20,000 a month.
Right.
Okay, and it never ends, and it becomes disciplined within you. And then whatever money you have. So to me, in a way, that should be the first bill you pay.
Absolutely.
After you pay your basic living expenses, which is your rent, your mortgage, so that you don't go into bankruptcy. Okay, by mortgage I mean your student loan. It's like a mortgage.
Right.
God's sakes. Okay.
Right. You're married to it.
So all those things, and then the next bill that you pay is your freedom fund, and then you have money left over to do what you want with.
Well, and you talked about this in that episode with Chuck, where you're talking about, a 3x emergency fund for your personal spending, which is 3 times what it costs you to live.
Yeah, but what should cost you like $2,000 to live, dude?
Right.
If you're not married, how can it cost you any more than $2,000 a month to live?
No.
Before debt service.
Right. No, absolutely.
That's $24,000 a year.
Yeah. That's not a lot of money.
No, it's not.
So a 3x emergency fund shouldn't be all that hard to do.
No, it's $6,000.
Right.
Before, debt service.
Right.
And the truth is, if you got into a hardship situation, debt service doesn't have to be paid.
Right.
Right?
No, absolutely.
But food and a roof has to be paid no matter what.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so you got to learn to live on a budget.
Absolutely.
That budget may be $10,000. I don't know what the budget is for each person, okay? And that budget must include the non-negotiable freedom fund.
Okay.
Okay, $1,000 a month year one, $2,000 a month year two, $5,000 a month year five, $10,000 a month year 10.
That's great.
No matter what.
Simple, autopilot, make it happen.
And the earlier you do it, okay, you can't say, well, I'm not going to do it year one, but I'll double up year two.
It's not going to happen.
Well, it's not that. It's the time value of money.
It's the compound interest.
Right. That's that 1 year. It's not, it's just 1 year. It's 1 year at the end.
Right.
It's not 1 year at the beginning. It's 1 year at the end.
When it's growing the most and the biggest.
It's the most money and it's growing the most, right?
Right.
So for example, I started that. So I say this from experience. I started saving at age 35 instead of age 25.
Okay.
That's one double cycle I missed.
Right.
Okay. So that's like a $5 million mistake for me.
Right. That's huge. And that's how many years earlier would that have put you at your 50,
Well, it would have put my freedom. I intend to work till I die, probably. Okay?
Right. Well, you and I are just that way.
But I didn't. It wouldn't have put me earlier there. It would have just put me at a bigger number there, or it would have given me more risk-taking abilities along the way. And see, what happens is when you have a freedom fund in place, okay, and when you're putting money towards your freedom fund, you can start doing things and taking risks that you would have otherwise not taken.
Right.
Okay. So because now I'm financially secure, not that I can retire, but I know that every month I'm putting this away. And I have my life insurance, my term life insurance policy in place. If something crazy would have happened to me and my family would be taken care of, I can do other things that I wouldn't be able to do otherwise.
Right.
I can buy a commercial property, or I can do XYZ. And then, to me, you budget out your vacations a year. Like I budget out my vacations, and I don't necessarily get into the numbers of it, but because everybody's going to be different, correct?
Right.
So I budget out, and that's a monthly bill for me.
That you put in, you're going this
month,
big vacation.
Every month I put $2,000 in, $3,000, whatever the number is, into my vacation fund.
Right. Because that's a priority to you.
Well, it's a priority to my family, right?
Right.
And I want them to do things and see things, correct?
Right.
So that, and the other thing that happens when I do that, and we physically actually put the money away and we put it into an escrow account of some sort, and I don't mean like a legal escrow account, but just account that holding account,
an online savings account that you don't touch.
Exactly. So what happens is I don't feel the burn, not being political, because I don't feel the burn. Okay.
Right.
But I don't feel the burn when I have to write that check.
Right.
So let's go back to your office.
Then you can enjoy that vacation that much more.
Or you don't, when I have to write the check for 10 grand, it doesn't hurt me.
Right.
Because I'm not writing it out of my personal account. I'm writing out of my fund account.
Right.
So the same thing for CE. I budget how much I want to be able to spend on CE a year in my office.
Okay.
And I put that money away. So I amortize it out.
Do you pay for any of your associates CE at all?
I do. What I do is I have a match program with my associates.
Oh, nice.
So my situation is a little bit unique. Number one, we do 20 classes a year in my office.
Okay.
Okay. So
right.
so in essence, and that's free to my associate partner. Okay.
Right.
So and then I do a match program with him.
Okay. Oh, that's awesome.
But here's the caveat to the match. If you leave within a year of taking it, I take the money back.
Okay. So this is kind of, you want the return on investment in your practice.
Yeah, it's a business.
Absolutely.
I'm willing to invest in you, but you can't take my money and run with it.
Right.
And I'm not going to give it to you because then you're not going to value it.
Right.
So I don't pay for things, I reimburse. If you can't afford to put it on your credit card, you can't go.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
So, and to me, there's so many messages that I have for people, but the most important message I have is $1,000 a month year one, $2,000 a month year two, $3,000 a month year three. Okay. And accelerate it as quickly as you can. So if you get to $4,000 a month year two, then you better be $5,000 a month year three.
Right.
Okay. And accelerate it as quick as you can. Okay. I would tell that to team members too. Maybe for them, it's $50 a month. Maybe for them, it's $100 a month. Okay. But if you're not putting away right away immediately, then you're doing something wrong. You're not being prepared, because there's nothing in life. No one in the dental profession needs to live that hand to mouth. They may have made choices to have to live that way, but nobody makes minimum wage in the dental industry.
Right.
Okay. So no one needs to live like that.
That's strapped.
That's strapped. Now, they may have made decisions in their life that have forced them to get that way, and they may continue to make decisions in their life that force them to get that way. But no one needs to live that way.
Right.
So there's no amount of money there's no one that shouldn't be able to weigh in the dental industry that shouldn't be able to put away some dollar amount.
Absolutely.
And I don't care how debt-ridden you are. I don't care any of those nonsense. You can put away $500 a month, $1,000 a month, whatever X is.
Right.
And every year, X has to automatically go up.
That's perfect.
No matter what, whether that's 1.1X, it's got to go up.
Right. You can't go back down, and you can't stay the same. It's got to go up.
Exactly. And that becomes part of your budget. And next thing you know, you're living your life and your lifestyle based on true disposable income.
Well, and that ability to say, you know what, I'm doing what I want to do because I want to do it, not because I have to.
There's so much freedom in that. Like, I heard Larry Rosenthal, one of the very first speakers I ever heard out of dental school, is he said, when I was young and just starting, he said, I always carried around $500 in my pocket. That way I could tell somebody I didn't need their money.
That's good.
So, I mean, so to me, part of the reason I can say no to people, and it's not like I really say no to people.
Right.
Okay. But I can say no to people because I've got all these things in place now in my life. And I should have had these things in place in my life 10 years ago.
Right.
Okay. But I didn't, because I was too busy buying fancy cars that I couldn't quite afford. I was too busy buying a home I couldn't quite afford. I was too busy, in a bad way, investing things in my practice that I should have probably waited a little bit longer to invest in.
Right.
Okay. And to me, so like the other thing comes back to, like, I had this conversation with my associate partner about debt repayment.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's like, I want to accelerate my debt repayment. I said, great. For every $1 extra that you pay towards debt, that's $1 extra you have to put towards your freedom fund.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
But let me give you the logic behind that. What happens if you default on that loan?
The student loan, you can't default. Well, if it's pay as you earn, then if you default or you're so strapped that you can't pay it, they don't make you pay it.
Right. But then, so let's say if you pay it early and you get strapped suddenly, can you go back to them and say, hey, I paid this early. Can I have more money back
No,
so I can live my life? Right.
no.
So to me, that's why I am not an advocate of paying debt off early at the expense of Freedom Fund.
Freedom fund and liquidity.
Yes. Okay. Because it's the same thing. I don't pay my house off early.
Right.
Okay. Because until Freedom Fund is funded, I'm not paying. Number one, it's like 3% interest, right?
Right.
So why in the world would I pay off something at that low of an interest rate? Because worst case scenario, if something were to happen, they can take my house.
Well, and someone put it to me this way: if you had $2,000 or $200,000 in student loans and $200,000 in the bank, and were on a payment plan for the rest of that $200,000, and then took all that money and paid it all off immediately, and then an opportunity came up that you could no longer move on because that $200,000 is gone, you're not in a better financial situation necessarily after the debt's gone at the expense of liquidity. If you
Right.
can do both, if you can still have liquidity and pay it all off, then pay it all off.
Sure, of course. But as long as you got the free, but even then, I would say if you had the money in the bank, I would say 1 for 1 or 1 for 2, depending on the stage in your career.
Right.
Okay. So like me, I told my wife, she's like, hey, I want to pay off debt. I said, no problem. That means we have to increase our Freedom Fund.
Yeah. That's
But
perfect.
it's just because it's logical, right? So for those of you that are in debt, okay, and that's the vast majority of you graduating, I'm not saying don't pay your debt off early, okay? I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is for every dollar that you put towards paying extra debt off early, that's $1 that you need to put towards Freedom Fund.
And those years, I mean, the thing with the debt level that we have right now, the $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 student loans, is that it's not going to disappear. Even if you're super aggressive, it's still going to take 10, 15, even the full 20 years. And if you wait that whole time and say, oh, well, I'll invest in my retirement after, there's no way to get that time back.
Well, but you've lost the time value of money.
There's no way to get that time back.
Yeah, I mean it's and the liquidity is gone, right?
Right.
I mean, it's a worst case scenario if some hardship hits you. You can't go say, hey, I'd like to draw against my student loan.
Right.
you can't.
Can I unrepay that? Oh.
Yeah, so it doesn't work that way, right?
Right.
So to me, those are to me the most important things that I can impress upon our young generation of dentists is budget everything. Budget your CE. Like I budget 20 grand a year for CE at this stage of my life.
Oh,
okay?
wow.
So $1,500 a month roughly. I put that in the bank, and that way when it comes time, I can write it.
Right.
Okay, and then that way I live a budgeted life in my practice, and then hey, I can take this class when I want to take this class. I don't look at it and say, God, that would really hurt my cash flow right now to pay
Right.
take a $5,000-$6,000 class.
Right. You don't.
Okay,
you just write the check.
I just write the check because it's not coming out of my operating account anymore. It's coming out of the budgeted account. It's like in our motel business, we know that every X number of years we have to renovate the motel. So
Right.
X percentage of our revenue will go into an escrow account.
Right.
So that way when that year 5 comes along and Holiday Inn says, okay, we're all moving to flat screen TVs and you have 100 rooms and you have to buy 100 flat screen TVs.
Right.
You've been budgeting that money. And that, to me, that's what a budget is.
It's spreading out costs that would otherwise devastate you over time and planning for them so that when they come up, you're prepared.
It's like property taxes. Every year I got to pay property tax on my building. So why do I want to pay a $12,000 check all at once when I can write a $1,000 check each month?
Right. And I bet if I asked you if you pay quarterly taxes or at the end of the year, you'd probably say quarterly.
I would say I pay monthly.
Monthly. Okay. You set it all aside.
Yeah, I'm not saying I give it to I don't give the government my money until they absolutely have to have it.
Right.
Okay. But I set it aside.
Right.
So every month, X dollars goes into tax fund.
Okay.
So that way, when that time comes, I'm not feeling this massive burden like, God, where the hell am I going to write this check from? Now, sometimes it still does feel like that.
Right.
Okay, but at least it's as less of a pain than before. And so this comes from budgeting and this. So to me, many of us think about budget is they think of it as a zero-sum game. I just don't want to hit zero. Okay, but to me, a budget is more than that. You need to budget for, like when you're a homeowner, you need to repaint your house every 10 years, correct?
Right.
Okay, so then what's it going to cost? Give me an example of what is it going to cost to paint your house every 10 years?
Say 10 grand.
So 10 grand. So that's $1,000 a year, correct?
Correct.
So you need to put $100 a month into an escrow account.
Right. The thing is, people, if they've never done that, that seems so foreign to them. They've just lived month to month to month. And
but that puts that, see, but that's the pressure. That's so this is the, okay, soapbox, okay? I hear from too many of your generation, they're like, I got these golden handcuffs.
Right.
Okay. Well, that's your own damn doing, by the way.
You put the cuffs on.
You put the cuffs on because you didn't, someone in your life, okay, and you can blame it on others, or you can say you never learned, okay? I would say you just never took the time to learn because you can't let your destiny be controlled by what other idiots around you do.
Right.
Okay? You just never learned that a budget is not just about the expenses you see in front of you today. Budgeting is about those things that you know. Like, for example, if you say, hey, I want to buy a practice 5 years from now, what's it going to cost you to buy a practice? Just give me a number.
Let's say I want to have 10% of the purchase price set aside.
The purchase price?
It's 500,000.
Okay, let's say purchase price is 500,000.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say typical bank loan is going to be 20%.
Okay.
Okay, and let's say that's 100 grand, right?
Right.
Okay, so now your goal is when do you want to be able to do this?
5 years.
5 years. Okay, so in addition to your freedom fund, because it's a non-negotiable to me.
Right.
Okay, because whether you own a practice or don't own a practice, you want to retire one day, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that means you need to have 100 grand over 5 years. That's 20 grand a year, correct? You need to put $1,600 a month away.
Okay.
If you're truly serious about buying your own practice in 5 years, start putting $1,600 a month away right now.
Right now.
Right now.
Absolutely.
Because then you won't have those golden handcuffs. Because too many of your listeners aren't doing that.
Right.
They say, well, I want to own a practice. I'm like, what do you, my question is always going to be, what are you doing to achieve that?
Right.
Well, it's so 5 years away from now. It's not 5 years from now. It starts today. Unless you've got 100 grand lying around. Okay, because if you had 100 grand lying around, you wouldn't have $400,000 in debt.
Right.
Okay, so it starts today. Okay, if you say to me, God, I want to buy XYZ car, then just start putting the money away.
Right.
You know, hey, I want to do XYZ. Start putting the money away.
And really, it's as easy as that. And just do it, set it aside, and then don't look at it.
And then reality starts to set in, correct?
Right.
And then you may say, God, that's a lot of money. Okay, then maybe 5 years isn't realistic.
Maybe it needs to be 6 or 7.
Yeah, or maybe, you know what? I need to work Saturdays.
Right.
Okay, because think about this. Every Saturday you work now, let's say you only make your minimum of $500.
Mm-hmm.
What does that really mean?
So that $2,000 a month, potentially.
That is your freedom fund.
Right.
That is your own my practice fund.
Right. That second associateship or that side associateship can be the difference
or
between.
That side business. Why does it always have to be dentistry? Why can't you have a side business?
Like a podcast and website?
Well, a podcast is a bad business. Okay, let me just be honest. Okay? My podcast cost me a boatload of money to do.
No, I'm there too.
So yours costs you a boatload of time to do.
It does.
So I don't do the time thing. But so to me, budgeting is so much more than what you see in front of you. It's about all those expenses and all those dreams that you have. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. T-Bone, thank you so much for all of this. This has been exactly all the topics I wanted to cover. You said all the things I wanted to say, plus a whole lot more that I didn't expect. So that was awesome. So thank you for your time.
That's it?
And
man, I gotta go to bed now?
Oh, well, dude. That's it on the recording. Okay, so that was part 2 of the interview with T-Bone. You can listen to his podcast, T-Bone Speaks. Check out his website, 3ddentist.com. And he actually will be there in Nashville in January with me and with our other fellow podcasters at the Voices of Dentistry Conference. So you can go on there and save $200 for your admission with the promo code SHARED. Lastly, I'm excited coming up either next week or in one of the weeks afterwards, we have a listener who contacted me and was interested in helping me out with the show. And he has gone through and listened to a bunch of podcasts, a bunch of different episodes on the topics that we're covering in season 1. And we've spliced together clips from different shows. And then we're going to discuss these clips and kind of interrelate them all. I'm pretty excited. And thank you once again to everyone who has left a review on iTunes. If you aren't driving right now, please stop. And if you've got a device that lets you do that, go on iTunes and leave us a quick review. It helps other people find our show. Or even better, just text this episode or an episode that really stood out to you to a friend. There's often whatever podcast player you're using, there's usually a button that you can click and then hit share and it'll send out that link. Or if they're new to podcast, just grab their phone and download it on their phone for them. So we appreciate all of the sharing and reviews that you guys have done so far. It means a whole ton. Thank you for sticking around to the end of the episode, and we'll talk to you next time on the Shared Practices Podcast, Season 1.